So Here's What Happened is a proud member of the Wilo podcast community. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of So Here's What Happened. As usual, I am your host, LaNeysha, and I am joined by
Carolyn. Hey.
Hey, we are back after a brief hiatus because the end of the year has been busy, but we are back in time to deliver y'all one last episode for the year, which I'm excited to talk about a bunch of things, but we're going to dive into our books first before we get too far into all of our other things. This month, I am choosing to tell y'all about The Walking Cat. I don't know why I'm holding it up because Carolyn's the only one who can see me. Anyways, yes, so it's called, it's a manga. It is called The Walking Cat. The story and art is by Tomo Kitaoka. And I love this so much. People who like The Walking Dead, I think y'all will also enjoy this. But basically, I'll read the synopsis. Look at what the cat dragged in. Of course. Zombies roam the earth and civilizations as we know it is dead. When Jin, a young man trying to survive the chaos, rescues a cat from certain death, the unlikely duo sets off on a quest to find a mysterious island where Jin's wife may be alive. Witness the zombie apocalypse through the eyes of a fearless feline whose curiosity may kill him yet. So this has been a very refreshing read, one that I did not know that I needed, just because like most people, I feel like I've been burnt out either on entertainment or just life and work. So I found this by chance when I was in a bookstore and I was just like, The Walking Cat. Okay, I'll pick it up. Sure, why not? And I did not expect to enjoy this so much, especially because maybe it's just the first time for most people who enjoy sci-fi and specifically zombie apocalypse genre, how many people can say they've seen it told through the story of a cat's eyes? I know I can't. But it's not like you're in the perspective of the cat. It's just that this man, Gene, saves this cat on a whim and they basically become a duo. And it's we've seen the story, we've seen the trope of a man and his dog going through the apocalypse, surviving together, and, just remove the dog and put a cat. And yeah.
A cat is an interesting companion because, cats are fickle. They don't necessarily answer on command if you need to run. If you need to run, you can call the dog, say, "Hey, Toto, follow me." A cat will they might feel like following you 5 minutes.
Right. It's the fact that it's just very wholesome. The fact that I'm saying a zombie apocalypse story is wholesome, but it is wholesome. The moments wherein Jean and Yuki, the cat's name, the cat is actually very loyal because I would assume the same thing. If I was going to have an animal companion in the zombie apocalypse, I was not going to pick a cat. I too would pick a dog. A dog is loyal. They're going to stay by me. But you know what? This cat surprises you. It's very loyal. He'd be on his back watching his six, and he goes ahead and kills zombies too. It's not this is very much a grounded series. So it's not like a supernatural anime, powered cat. It's actually just a regular cat and a regular man in a zombie apocalypse trying to find his wife.
How does the cat stay on his back while he's fighting though? Does he have it strapped in a little carrier?
He had a backpack. So I'll give a little teaser from the first chapter. So basically he finds the cat and the cat leads him to a house. And the man is like, whose house is this? And if you see a woman on the bed, and apparently it's the cat's former owner because the cat was a stray and it would go there for food. And then the guy is confronted by the husband and he's like, well, thanks for bringing Yuki back. And he gave the dude food and he was about to leave. Well, the cat sneaks into the backpack and just you see its little head peeking out and dude thinks the cat's gone. And then later on, he's in a fight with a zombie and the cat jumps out the bag. And he scratches the zombie's eye and stops it from killing him. Or he's a good cat. They make a good team.
Okay, so if the story's from the cat's point of view, do we get a idea of what's running through the cat's head? Because there was something that I watched recently that was like that, where you got the it was the animals, they weren't anamorphic or anything. They weren't talking, but there would be subtitles at the bottom of the screen telling you what the animals were thinking. I'm trying to remember what it was, and I don't remember. But is the book like that? It tells you what the cat is thinking. Why did he get into the bag?
It doesn't tell you like any thought bubbles, or like it doesn't like talk for the cat or anything like that. It does, however, like there's just like panels with like no words, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But like you look at the cat's expressions and it tells you a lot. Like in this one, the cat finds a female cat, right?
Mm.
And he's like, "Ooh, a female. I'm gonna make my move." This big old chunky cat comes out, and they stare each other down, and you know what's happening. So you have moments like that, or like there was in the beginning, the way the man and the cat cross paths is because the
Yeah.
cat is chasing food. It finds a rat. A zombie snatches the rat up and eats it. And the cat's like, so
Really?
like yeah, exactly, really. So like the mangaka Kitaoka, they do a great job of like using expressions, especially like on the animal's face, to tell you what the cat is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's I don't know, I like it. I mean, for me, someone who's like, I tell folks I am not a cat person, I do think it's like just a very cute concept for a story.
Yeah, no, that's different. I'm probably gonna remember that thing at the randomest time, like what it is I was watching where you got the thoughts for the animals, and it's gonna bug me till I figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was like I thought it was like really cute when you got like these little subtitles for the animals themselves, and like this is what the animal is thinking, which is
Yeah.
so funny.
Oh, and there is one more thing. So like the cat, so and there's different chapters where you'll see the cat had other interactions with other humans before the main guy in the series. So like you get a lot of different stories, like bite-sized stories from, because the cat has all these memories from previous people. And I
Mm-hmm.
am not done with it yet, but I'm still very anxious because I feel like, is the man going to die? And then will he just become a memory for the cat?
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, it could be cool, but I also feel like it's gonna be sad if they keep on making me think that they're gonna be best friends and they get until the end. Because in a zombie apocalypse, who really survives?
Have hope.
I would like to have hope. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna get into The Walking Dead because I'm behind, but never
Mm.
mind. But yeah, no, that's my book.
Okay, so my book is called Iron Widow by Xiran J. Zhao, and I love this book. This book is so good. Basically, it's like if you take a historical Chinese epic and combine it with Pacific Rim, and with a little bit tossing with a little bit of Neon Genesis, set in ancient China but with futuristic technology. And I love this book. So the story is about Wu Jietian, who is she's 16 years old, and she's inspired and based off of the first and only female emperor that China has ever had. And oh, sorry, she's not 16, she's 18. And I just love this, but it's about this. It's about this 18-year-old Wu Jietian, and she is selected to become what they called they're like basically like sacrifices for these soldiers who fight in these giant mechs. And the reason they're sacrifices is that the soldiers who pilot the mechs, they use women to for their energy and for their mental power, because it's kind of like, for like Pacific Rim, it's all about, like you have to be able to have like a mind meld, right? You have to why am I suddenly blanking on this? And I had all of these words in my head. And they have to bond. They have to have a mental bond at rift, right? That's the term they use in Pacific Rim, but it's not the exact same term used in Iron Widow, but it's the same concept. And these guys, they use all of these girls' powers. So unless the girl is like super, super strong, they end up killing them. And Wu Jietian, she's chosen to become a concubine for their head soldier. And she joins it. She actually signed up for it because she was doing it out of revenge. She wanted revenge for her sister who died. And I just love this book. I read this book in an entirety. It's amazing. It has like fantastic. I think Sharon J. Giles, she does such a great job like helping the readers to visualize the action. And the mechs are based off of Chinese mythological creatures. So you have like the nine-tailed fox, the moon rabbit, and in Shang-Chi, there's this little animal with wings,
Mm-hmm.
and 6 legs. So there's one of those. And then there's like a firebird, and like it's like amazing imagery that I got from reading the books. And then of course there's a trouble, which I love that happened. And so it's a trouble between Wu Zetian and these two guys. One is who also is a mech pilot, and he is Ishimin, and I love Ishimin. Like I love this character. Like he broke my heart, but I'm just like, you are a hero. I love you, Nishitian. And then there's another Ishimin, sorry. And then there's another character, Gao Yiji. And he's such a sweetie, but he's also super smart, and he's also badass. Like all these characters are badass. And I love this book. To me, it's like one of my favorite books I think I've read in a really, really long time. And it's about femininity. It's also about trusting people, about learning to trust people. And I think it's about capitalism. And there's a lot of like different, there's actually a really good theme and a what I would call social commentary, but I don't want to say what it is, because the way how she reveals what the main underlying premise of this whole story is so brilliant. Because I was thinking it from like, I would say halfway through, I'm like, what if this is what this book is about? And then when I got to the end, I'm like, yes. And it was so good. She built the story so good. And I love the cover. So the cover is actually, one of the reasons I love the cover is that it tells you a lot about the characters, and it helps you to visualize what is going on in the stories, especially like with regards to the Firebird, which is the mech. And I think it's a really good I wouldn't even call it a YA novel, like a youth novel. I think it's just like a really fun book for the adults would enjoy. It's like it's YA fantasy for adults basically, and it's just like great. It's like really well written. It's funny as hell. There's some scenes that had me laughing out loud. I think Wu Zetian is so dramatic. Like she is like a Chinese drama character. She is like ridiculously over dramatic. She is extra in the best way. And then the two male characters, Ishimin, and he's a darling. But I think another thing that I'm not sure if a lot of people mention it, but for me, another important aspect of it is how she discusses disability, because she becomes disabled because since this book is set in ancient China, this is at the time where you had foot binding. So, in Chinese history, like there was a point for hundreds of years where young girls' feet were literally broken in half and bound up into what they call the lotus flower. And like the book goes into like very deep descriptions about what that process is like, and like how it can have mental, emotional, and physical trauma for the young girls, and then for the women, and how a lot of the customs affected the relationships between mothers and daughters and sisters, and even the relationship to the men around them. And she does Xiran, she does a really good job of making the book entertaining, but also telling you about how women were treated in society back then. And then you can also take it as a modern aspect of how women do things to their body, like with plastic surgery. And like, there's nothing wrong with plastic surgery, but like how just some women are pressured or believe they have to have these kind of things to fit specific beauty standards. Yeah. But it also talks about the physical ramifications of that, because Wu Zetian becomes disabled because of that. Like she can't walk properly. And then eventually, I think another thing about it is like she becomes involved with the mechs, but because she now has access to this new age technology that which she didn't have in like her home, which is in the country, like in the rice fields, she's filled with so much anger about what happened to her sister. And she's filled with so much anger about what's happening to girls at the expense of like propping up men. But she's also able to like gain benefits from it, which is like she's able to have medical treatment. And then she's for the first time has a wheelchair, which means that she doesn't have to walk, right? Which is like painful for her. So there's like this, so the book does a really good job of showing like how capitalism or how technological advancements can help society, but also hinder at the same time. So like there's a lot of things in the book, and I would recommend anyone to read it. As I said, it's extremely entertaining, but I think also really good lesson on like just like basic Chinese mythology. It's not like a history book because it is fantasy, but it teaches you about different like customs and then mythology about the creatures and like what their meaning is in Chinese mythology and culture. So this is a fun book.
Nice. No, it sounds good. I like books like that, because I feel like we all could use a little help understanding cultural references or significances in series or films, because like if people could I think it's fine when people, it's like when using Shang-Chi as an example, it's like so many people said like, that's a nine-tailed fox from Pokemon. I'm like, that is not. That y'all should look a little deeper. I mean, like, I get it because that's what they recognize it from, but like you should also maybe dig a little deeper into understanding, well, what's the cultural significance of this mythological creature in this, instead of just, because like I get it, like if you recognize a nine-tailed fox from like anime or Pokemon, some people aren't going to dig that deep, and they might just like, I recognize that from anime, like Naruto or from Pokemon, and like that's one thing, yes, but you might learn that it is it's a part of an actual culture, and not just from an anime.
Exactly.
And you have people who be like, no, y'all don't know what y'all talking about. It's from anime. I'm like, it is not an anime reference. It is actually
Exactly.
reference to their culture.
Exactly. You're like, where do you think these animators got the idea for these creatures from?
Connection.
Right.
But anywho.
Yeah, but no, it's true, because like then, like we talk about in the nine-tail, but like actually in East Asian mythology in particular, there's 3 forms of the nine-tail. There's the Korean version, which is the Kumiho. There is a Japanese version, which is called the Kitsune. And for the Chinese, let me look up the correct name for it. There, like each country has their specific name for it. Right. And so in Chinese, and actually it's not even really necessarily called the nine-tailed fox. In Chinese mythology, it's called the fox spirit, which again is slightly different to the Japanese and Korean iterations. And in Chinese, in Pinyin, it's called Juwehu. And so like, so as I said, Korean is the Kumiho, in Japanese it's the Kitsune, and in Chinese it's the Juweho, and each one is Juweho. So I want to make sure, because I'm reading the tones. Juweho. Right. Okay. I think I got that correct because I'm looking at the tones. That's what paying up my 2 semesters studying Mandarin and Pinyin.
Putting them to
like each of them has their own like significance in their cultures. And in Iron Widow, she does explain a little bit of like the significance of these creatures in Chinese mythology. Like each one represents something very specific. And I think she does it brilliantly in the fact that like she kind of also ties it in how it relates to like male and female relationships, like like how for a woman, a phoenix or the firebird represents something different than it would for a man, so I think she does a really good job of doing that. And like, yes, like fans of anime and even like Korean dramas need to realize a lot of these things have real world context, and historical and cultural significance. So they're not all just entertainment. So like, so just like people read it for yourself. Like if you like we've talked before about Avatar, The Last Airbender, like how a lot the characters are influenced by different Asian ethnic cultures, because there's like the Inuit tribes are inspired the water tribe in Avatar. There's a Japanese, there's Chinese, there's Tibetan, Mongolian influences, South Indian influences, and like all of these things, and they all have like specific significance. And also, I think it also matters how they're iterated into these anime and manga, whatever, because like you can have like I think disrespectful renderings, and you can have respectful renderings. So it's all about also the type of media that you're consuming too, that can influence the way you consume the media.
Yep. Moral of the story: it does not hurt to dig a little deeper.
I know, right?
Right. But I like that. I'm going to add that to my list to check it out.
It's so good. I read it in a day. I'm going to read it again soon. Yay.
You haven't steered me wrong yet. Moving on to TV, I'm going to talk about the one show that I have consistently actually watched weekly for the last 3 months, because everything else I barely watch because of school. But I'm going to talk about Komi Can't Communicate, which if y'all this might sound familiar for some people, because I talked about the manga Komi Can't Communicate, and this fall it finally got adapted into an anime, which very excited for. When it was announced last year, or maybe it was like, I don't know, all the years have blended. But when it was announced, I did not know at the time it was going to be on Netflix. I did not know at the time it was going to be a weekly series on Netflix. So
Oh,
if y'all are not familiar with this, Netflix is doing some anime TV shows where there is a weekly release, and this is one of those. So yeah, it's so Komi can't communicate. Actually, let me pull up the synopsis because why not? I review this weekly on But Why Though if y'all want to check out the written reviews um for it. And sorry, I'm gonna have to like pause. But yes, so Komi Can't Communicate is a Japanese Netflix original anime directed by Ayumu Watanabe and animated by Studio OLM. The slice of life comedy is an adaptation of the popular manga series created by Tomohito Oda, and the series premise centers on an average high school boy, Hito Tadano, and Shoko Komi, the most popular girl at their prep school. Tadano is the first classmate ever to notice that Komi suffers from social anxiety. And behind the icy, beautiful, and poised demeanor that she has become known for throughout their school, she just wants to make friends. Unfortunately, her social anxiety makes that difficult for her. But now with Tadano by her side, she may have a chance at achieving her goal of making 100 friends. So I really like, just like in the manga, but I think it's important in the anime that they continue to reiterate that Komi has a it's still kind of weird when sometimes like in the manga it was said a communication disorder, but I like that they explain like it's a social anxiety which affects her ability to communicate with people. So essentially she's bad at communicating. She can't communicate with people verbally. So that's important to understand because it's not, because people will misunderstand her as just like, well, why is it so hard for her to make friends? Like, can't she just write a note and do it? Can't she do this and do it? Can't she just text people? No, she literally, in every aspect of communicating with people, it is hard for her. And she has anxiety and she gets anxious about communicating with people. So she, in the first episode, it's the most beautifully animated episode because it's very dramatic shots. It's very honestly dynamic in all the ways it like uses the characters, the setting, the background. It's beautiful. But the first episode really takes care and time using the bulk of the episode explaining what is this communication disorder. It like you for to like just give y'all this, like, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but um it's not like something traumatic happened. We don't have any reason why she can't communicate. We know that like she just has never been able to to communicate with people like other folks would before. So she just can't communicate. And a lot like what it's a line she had said in the first episode where she's just like, I tried and I wanted to talk to people, but then I started to get scared and worried about what they think of me differently, what they hate if I said something the wrong way, would like, and you see how like how all of this really impacts her mental health and how her anxiety is affected because she's so worried about, and what if I say the wrong thing? What if people hate me if I say it? What if this? What if that? And that stops her from being able to communicate. And with I think it's important that Tadano, her classmate, is the first person to like recognize that she has has issues with communicating because everybody else in the school just thinks of her as this super popular, almost god tier person. Like they're just like, and they're so worried about approaching her that they're just like, oh no, she wouldn't want to be friends with me. She would never talk to me. She's just so beautiful. She's so popular. I want to be friends with her. And like, little do you know, she would like to be friends too. But y'all just make all these like assumptions about her without actually approaching and talking to her. So which leads them to the issue at hand, where now with Tadano's help, you have Komi and Tadano, you have them both navigating friendships in high school, which I love in like the second episode. You think it's going to be easy if like Tadano's like, it's going to be easy. I'll just introduce her to some girls and the girls will like welcome her in and they'll like her and everything will be fine. And little does he know that, like, as soon as he tries to make an introduction, one of the popular girls in the class is just like, "How dare you approach us, you regular dude, like, know your place," to him, which he's like, "Okay, so this is going to be harder than I thought." And
Mm.
like, and these are girls who would like to be friends with Komi, but they're so stuck on like high school hierarchy that like you're missing out on an opportunity to be friends. But the other thing about this series is that that it's important to Komi to make genuine connections and genuine friendships. She doesn't just want to be friends with anybody. She actually wants to like be friends with people that she gets along with and can get to know, and that, it's it's a friendship. It's not just like, "Oh, you're popular, I'll be friends with you. You're popular, and then that's how I'll get 100 friends faster." Like, no, she's not trying to make 100 friends to just like as a status. She wants to make actual genuine connections with people. Other things about it that I like, there's a character named Najimi Osana. So Najimi, like the way they introduce them is that they are gender ambiguous. And Najimi is basically the antithesis. Am I saying that right? Antithesis.
Antithesis?
Antithesis. Thank
Antithesis,
you.
I think. Yes. Antithesis.
Antithesis, yes. So basically the complete opposite of Komi in every way, where Najimi can talk to anybody and become friends with them in less than a second. Like their nickname is everyone's childhood friend. Just literally everyone's childhood friend throughout the school, and they're just friends with everybody. And it's just because and they are an expert at communicating.
Mm.
And when Tadano introduces Najimi to Komi, they even have like this kind of rift of like, Najimi's anxious because Komi's not talking, and Komi's anxious because Najimi's not talking. And it's just like they cancel each other out because like Najimi needs somebody to talk back to them. or they're just like, "Well, now I'm anxious and I can't communicate with you." But there's plenty of other characters. I mean, it's a beautiful slice of life comedy series, which for people who aren't familiar with the term slice of life, it's a grounded in a sense of, you're going to see characters do everyday things. You're going to see them go to school. You're going to see Komi go to the library. You're going to see her, there's going to end the show, how the show is placed for each, or paced for each episode. It's like chapters in the episode where it's like you have Komi at school, and like there's a small maybe 10-minute segment of them at school, and then like the next chapter is 5 minutes of Komi maybe at a restaurant trying to order a coffee. It's hilarious trying to watch her how she can order a coffee when she literally will not speak verbally. But that's the whole point of the series, is that you have people who are watching her from the outside and like, "Oh, she looks so demure and so beautiful. I want to get whatever she's getting." And then you will see how like she doesn't say anything, but the barista is like, "You don't have to say anything. I know what you need." It's just like, "Sir, how do you know what she needs? What are you talking about?"
It's like, no, you can't guess. But the thing is that the interesting thing to me about that is there's a drama that came out recently, a K-drama that came out recently on Netflix. It's called Inspector Cool, and there's a character called Santa. And one of the reasons I love this character is he doesn't talk. He probably says in total, out of the entire 16 episodes, I think he talks maybe 7 times total, and each line of dialogue is very short, and it's just because he doesn't want to talk. He just doesn't talk. And he uses a phone app where he just types in, and then the app like does the audio translation of what he's saying. And I love this because like not even the villain, no one that he interacts with like looks down on him for doing that. It's just an accepted, like they accept that this is his form of communication. I want to say, "Why are you using a phone? Why don't you just talk?" That never happens. Like people like, okay, like he types and they talk, and like they respond back to him as though he's spoken to him. And so I like where like more like a show like that or a character like that, and then you have like Najimi in the show where like, but I think it's different because like, as you were saying, I was like wondering, why does she just use a phone app to communicate? Like yeah, writing a note takes more time, but like just use a phone app to communicate.
Right.
And
but
it's like that's such a simple way to solve her problem. It's not a way to solve the problem, but it's just a way to get around it without people judging or misunderstanding her.
Right. And her thing is like, people, you would think like, "Oh yeah, just get a smartphone and text out what you want to say." But it's like, no, she gets nervous about like, she'll freeze up and not know what to say in a text. And it's like, and that's just, and I think that just shows the extent of like her anxiety, like of how this anxiety affects her ability to communicate with people. But like, but she's fine using a notepad and a paper, and everyone accepts that form of communication. No one, none of the classmates, when she starts to communicate that way, nobody questions that, and they
Is
accept
she
it.
getting any form of counseling?
No, so from like going from the manga and then going from like the anime, I don't think they're ever going to bring up counseling or anything like that. But I will say, and this is a spoiler from the manga, but like y'all can, I don't know, y'all cannot listen to this if you don't want to, but like she does make progress
Mm.
in communicating with people. So it's really about her getting like it starts off with her making friends, and as she's met certain friends and she's been able to like get more comfortable, she eventually becomes able to communicate verbally out loud and speaking out loud to people. I think the series, it's not so much about her, about this anxiety, about it making, it's not so much about the anxiety and making it seem like she has a disorder that needs to be fixed, as
Mm.
much as it is how is she going to navigate the world with this anxiety and how does she progress through it.
Mm. For me, it's not. I'm not thinking that it needs to be fixed. It's just that counseling to me isn't necessarily about
Right.
fixing a problem. It's understanding what
Mm-hmm.
causes the problem, like how you yourself relate to the own issue that you have. Because like
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who's getting counseling for like anxiety, depression, or whatever, it's not necessarily you want to fix it. You just want to understand it better so that you're able to function with it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why I think like for a show like that, if they're doing all of this and so much of it is about her learning how to communicate with people, I would think having counseling would be a major part of helping her understand how to communicate with people rather than just fumbling along until even, because like I know it's a manga and it's thing, but I'm just thinking like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, for anyone who, because people like to say, oh, it's just after to me, read things into these things deeply. I'm like, yeah, you do, especially if you're talking about some people with mental illness are, are having problems like communication or suffer or have disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. Like you do have to be careful with how it's portrayed, whether it's in manga, whether it's in a TV show, whether it's in film. You have to be like, I think creatives need to be very cognizant of how like they're portraying issues that real people have. Like these are real issues, and like if you're doing it wrong, if you're not putting enough thought, like to me, I would think having just even mentioning the possibility of her going to a counselor, a psychiatrist, a psychologist to figure out what, because like something like that doesn't just happen. Like something had to have
That's the
triggered it.
thing. No, that's the thing. Even from all the manga, there's never been any explanation. She's just like, she just has had always been nervous about communicating. And then like when you get a peek into her family side, you learn that like, okay, the father can communicate out loud. The brother can communicate out loud. The mother is very talkative, but the father doesn't communicate often. Like him and Komi just have this understanding and way of communicating with each other that's almost telepathically. The brother chooses, like the character you were talking about, the brother can communicate out loud. He just chooses not to communicate out loud with anyone at all. And I think like the only thing that can seem like that seems like it could be related to like trauma for her is that she felt very isolated because she did not communicate with anybody in her junior high. But again, like it's like she has never communicated out loud to anyone. Like at home she can communicate, like, but she doesn't communicate, like, but she's not, her mom just like understands what she wants, or she'll like, but it's like she's comfortable at home. So it's just like it's not that she's, and that's the thing that's like I've always found is like interesting. I'm like, okay, so there's nothing that happened specifically in your life from like childhood where you didn't, that where you could not talk. It's just that she's always been nervous about talking and anxious about talking to people because she's worried about what they'll think of her. At least that's how that's how it's been portrayed.
And see,
I
that's
would like
weird
to
to
see it
me.
dug deeper though, in like in the anime, if they want to dig into it deeper, because I get that like that's the whole series, like that's the conflict, is just that it's a conflict. It's not this thing that she's going to go and talk about with anybody.
Okay,
But
so like the thing that's really has me really interested in this is like sometimes like you don't always need a reason, but for something that's something that's so debilitating for her, I'm like, I need a reason. Like you like there are kids who like choose not to talk. I know there are kids like and like they're not everyone is on the spectrum, but there's just some kids that they don't want to talk, like when they're young, right? And
Right.
like, and it's not like they're like, and it's not that they're anxious, that they have anxiety or anything like that. They just, like they're just like, just if they're talking to their whatever. That's different than a character like her who is so filled with so much angst and anxiousness that that it physically prevents her from talking. That's, to me, is different. Where like there is a reason, there has to be a reason for that. Like, where did this anxiety come from?
Right. And I mean, maybe the anime will dig into that deeper. I will say, like, I'm trying to think back from the beginning of the manga. I think it just went, like, they explained it as, like, from what we know from, like, in high school, the most traumatic thing that happened to her is that she felt very isolated all throughout her school life in junior high. And like even before then, she felt isolated because she did not communicate with anyone. But again, it's not that people treated her or bullied her or did anything wrong to her. Everyone treated her as like she was super popular and they were nice to her, but she did not have an actual friend. And then
which I understand, because like I suffer with anxiety, and I used to feel like isolated in school because I only had like a few friends, because like I was bullied in school and stuff. But then also it was, my sister made friends easier than I did. But it's just like, I don't know, I'm just like really fascinated by this. I would just ask, I'm like, what caused this? Where did the anxiety come from? If she went to school with the anxiety, she didn't have it at home, but she has it at school. That's where I'm having a problem.
And the thing is, like, it doesn't stop her from doing things like going to school, doing tasks at school, participating in class. Like she's always found a way to navigate around it. So like when she's called upon in class to read something, she'll stand up, she'll hold the book, won't say a thing, and the teacher's like, lovely, good job. And it's just because people perceive her, like just taking her appearance and just like, oh, we must not have heard her, but she just did a great job. She looks so beautiful, because they're so distracted by how beautiful she looks. And she doesn't use this.
That sounds like such a typical K-drama, not even K. That sounds like such a typical Asian drama trope, like where someone is so beautiful, like you excuse any kind of nonsense. Not I'm calling social anxiety nonsense, but like they get away with doing any and everything because they're pretty. You're like, oh my god, you're a trashy person, but you're so pretty. Like
they literally do that though. And and that's the other thing about this series, is that it leans into anime tropes, like leans into them, and very like much. That's the best thing about the comedy, is that it's leaning in very hard to like the childhood friend trope, the confession after school trope, the beach episode.
There's always a beach episode.
The festival. The summer festival where there's fireworks and possible romance comes about. Just
two people falling in love as the fireworks burst overhead. Very much a trope.
Yeah. Very much. But yeah, that is Komi Can't Communicate. I've enjoyed it for the anime. I mean, it's the slice of life series that I did not know I needed, just because like I've just been tired and I've just needed something that I can escape into, and this is nice. But I like how I do like how it shows. Oh, sorry. Last thing. My favorite thing about the series is that Komi, while she does have her issues with communicating, you have other students who like she meets, and like inadvertently or directly, she helps them with their communication issues too. Like she's she finds a way to encourage people, because like she's trying to get out of her shell and trying to communicate more and to overcome her fear of communication. And it's like other people will be like, it's like it could be something as simple as her handing a handkerchief to somebody or approaching them and trying to talk to them, and they'll be like, oh, you want to be my friend, you're helping me. And then that's when like that connection finally happens and they're able to communicate.
So. Yeah, I'm gonna watch that eventually, probably for Christmas, because there's another one that I'm not sure if it's weekly or if it was uploaded all one time. It was Where the House Husband, I think it's called.
Yes, I love it.
That's the one. That's one I want. That's on my Christmas watch list too. Because you know me, I'm a foodie. I just love watching anime. Food is always so pretty.
And there's a live action one too.
Yeah, I've seen clips for this one, and the food looks really good. So like that's what I'm gonna get into for over Christmas. So my TV show is, I'm gonna do 2 instead of 1, and the reason I'm doing 2 is because I think both shows are 2 sides of the same coin. And they're Korean dramas. Okay, so like I know I've talked a lot about Korean dramas this year for like a lot of the shows I've covered are Korean dramas. I was gonna do Japanese, but the reason I haven't been able to do the Japanese because the ones that I'm watching aren't completed yet. I think one of them, which is super rich is finished this week, but I haven't been able to watch the episodes. So I haven't been able to watch the subbed one. And then there's Radiation House. That one, the subs were taking forever. So, but I promise next year I'm going to do more from other countries like Japan, Thailand, China. But for December, I'm going to talk about Hellbound and Happiness. And these two shows, I think, are two of my favorite shows for the year. And I love my, like, I'm not going to call them trash, but, you know, just like the ones that you don't have to think too deeply. I love those type of dramas, yes. But these shows are not that. The Hellbound and Happiness are not ones that you can just look at as regular empty quote unquote entertainment. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk about Hellbound first because that one came up first. So Hellbound is on Netflix, and that one was written by Yeon Sang-ho and Choi Kyu-suk. So if you don't know, Yeon Sang-ho is the director and writer of Train to Busan and the sequel of it, Peninsula. And so him and Choi Kyu-suk, they created a webcomic, and they based the film, the TV show Hellbound off of this webcomic that they created. So it's only 6 episodes, it's relatively short, and you can watch it in a day if you want to. It's not heavy. Take that back.
Okay.
It's heavy, but it's not heavy and as in it's super depressing or it's like a lot or has like a lot of really dark imagery. It's more about the themes for this show. I think this show does a spectacular job of exploring the ways that religious fanaticism, media, religious ideologies, and also I would think parenthood as well as moral and ethics all combined together in what I think is one of my favorite shows for the year. And this show, I think, like for anyone who grew up in a conservative household or a conservative culture and country, I'm from Barbados, and like Barbados is becoming more progressive, but it's also still a very conservative country. It's like Christian, conservative, like Protestant, especially. I went to Anglican churches. I went to Pentecostal. I went to a couple Baptist churches, but for most of for my teenagers into early adulthood, I was Seventh-day Adventist. So like very conservative, very Protestant. And like South Korea, like the show is a South Korean drama. So South Korea itself is also very conservative, Christian conservative. And they explore how these things can affect society negatively. Because, you know, like when like conservatives or evangelical Christians, they say, oh, you know, religion, Christianity, all these things are beneficial for society, you know, like sin and all this stuff will be eradicated. But he shows how actually it can be the very opposite. And it makes sense because like foundation of Christianity as we know it isn't only founded on like the 10 commandments and like Jesus teaches in the New Testament. A lot of it is also very much founded on war and destruction and death. Like the war of the Crusades, exactly. Like a lot of that ties into the story. Like they talk about how people are persecuted for whether or not they believe in God, whether or not they believe in tenets, and like literally persecuted because there's these 3 beings, these 3 creatures, monsters, if you will, that just suddenly appear and they literally beat the shit out of people. Excuse my language, like beat them, like and then like just burn them and torture them and send their souls to hell. But before that happens, this is something that's revealed later in the show is that there's this face that appears and issues a decree, and you will have basically, you know, like in the Bible it says, many tekel Euphrates, which is a verse from in the Bible where I think it was in Babylon where the king, I can't remember, it was one of the Babylonian kings where the hand of God appeared and wrote, it was many tekel Euphrates, which is like you have been waiting and found wanting, like that was inscribed on the wall. And basically what this decree is saying is basically the same thing, where it's like you have been judged and you have been found to be a sinner, and like therefore henceforth on this particular day at this particular time you will face judgment and your soul will be sent to hell. And like that's a very Protestant Christian idea. And it was something that especially like we mentioned the War of the Crusades, and like you had the Spanish Inquisition where they use religion as a way to torture people to like, you know,
for conversion
for conversion. And then like a lot of like straight up into like the 18th and early 19th century with slavery, where like slave masters and the establishments, like the countries and like colonialist countries like Spain and England, they use religion as a way to demonize people. You know, they went to like ethnic countries, like they went to the Caribbean, they went to South America, they went to Latin America, they went to Africa, they went to China, and they said you people who are our ethnic cultures are savages, you know, and you are not of God, and we will literally slaughter you to show that you must follow the Bible and follow God. Like our God is like God of salvation, but we will kill you for not following our tenets. So like this show kind of explores in very, very subtle ways. And then it talks about how like evangelicals and cult leaders use media to manipulate people and to mislead people into for using the whole idea again of religion and Christianity and belief in God and morality as a way to get people to as a way to exploit people, right? And like it's like I just think it's like one of the best written dramas for the year. It's so well done, and Happiness is kind of like, I think Happiness is the same but slightly different. So Happiness is more, instead of about religion, Happiness is more about classism and capitalism and socialism, because Happiness is talking about how people put class and social structures above morality and ethics. So whereas in Hellbound you have these three creatures who are damning people's souls to hell, in Happiness there is an outbreak. At the beginning you're like hoping that they're not inferring that the vaccine for COVID, because the show does start out talking about COVID. Like literally, this is one of also the first K-dramas of 2021 where COVID itself is referenced. Like in Sisyphus and in there's another drama where they reference a pandemic, but they don't actually say the word COVID. Whereas in Happiness is the first one that I've seen where the word COVID is actually mentioned, and where it has had, and where it, like they're showing the impact after a long term where like they've like COVID has been not eradicated, but they've learned how to like suppress it as much as possible. And like the military and the government are working together to find vaccines and like to prevent another outbreak. But what happens is like there's this medication. It's not the vaccine, because at first you're thinking like, I hope they're not saying the vaccine turns them into zombies, but it doesn't. It's another drug that was created for a weight loss drug. It's kind of like a stimulant. Of
course,
it's like but it's like a stimulant for people who like, but it gets people addicted. But because it messes up their systems where it mutates the cells and mutates the body. And like because you have this outbreak now, like these people are like sequestered in this building, and it kind of shows like, again, COVID. I think this shows such a brilliant example of how society falls apart because people don't work together. Right. So like the building is just like a test, like, you know, a small, like a petri dish of society in general. And like these people, there's some who want to work together, which is like the two main characters who work together to try to stem and like control the situation and say, okay, we need to have a plan. We need water. We need supplies. Like we all have to work together to do this. And then there's other people who are only in it for themselves. They're only out to like control the situation because like there's this woman, she wants to be the building manager, because to her that's like her highest ambition. They want to be the building manager because this is a really expensive building in a very coveted part of Seoul. And like, you know, and it's talking about how in South Korea, and I would say in any capitalist society where like position and power matter more than actually helping people. You want to be in charge of all these people, but you don't actually care about how to protect these people. It's just the title you're after. And then these people, all they care about is like, they have the people separating in the building because they're thinking, oh, I'm on the highest floor, which means that my life means more to you because I'm richer. So because that, you know, the higher up you go, the more expensive the apartments are. So you're thinking, I live here, so therefore I'm above you, literally and physically and metaphorically. So like these people who are in the more expensive apartments, they are looking down on the people in the lower apartments. And that's actually a discussion, a commentary on South Korean society, where literally in Seoul and in like some of the bigger cities and provinces where like the richest people do look down on the poor people. And there's literally buildings, even in England, where like there's a home, the people who own their own condos and apartments look down on the people who rent.
Right.
And like they don't want them to come through the main entrance. Like they have to come through the side or the garage. And in England it's the same. In England, and I think in New York too, there are buildings where like the renters are people from like the lower apartments aren't allowed to enter through the main doors. They have to come through the back door or the side door.
Wow.
It's segregation. It's social segregation. And the show is talking about that brilliantly and using a virus. And to me, the virus in this isn't about the virus that's turning the people into monsters. The virus to me is greed and selfishness and you know that's really corrupting the society. The virus is just an offshoot of that, right? And so I think these two shows work really well together, and they're like to me they're like a really, they'll be like it would be too much as a double feature, but I think they're like, as I said, like two sides of the same coin. I think the writers did such a brilliant job. And I should say Happiness is written by Han Sang-woo and directed by Angelo. And it's like they're two, like I want to say they're two separate, but I kind of look at them as the same. So like they're my favorite one of my favorite Korean dramas for 2021. And Happiness is on Viki and other streaming platforms, whereas Hellbound can only be found on Netflix legally.
And I'm like, I'll just add, because like I know I'll probably mention Hellbound later, but like it is very good for all those reasons. So just I really enjoyed it. I need to go back and just finish the last 2 episodes of it, but I know I took a break because school got in the way, but man, I also needed a break because I'm like, this is heavy. Like, because you're like, it's not okay. Could I watch it and I'd be fine? Yes, I could, but like,
it makes you think a lot.
It makes you think a lot, and it's one of those shows that like I started watching it as something to have on as I was doing my papers, and then I realized I can't watch this as I do my papers because I am very much sucked into like knowing everything about this. But no, it's like you just don't want to miss any details. So it's good. I can't wait. I might go back and finish that tonight.
The last 2 episodes are so good. Like there's a brilliant reference, I think personally, to Children of Men. And I think, that's like, I love that film. So like the way how that reference, as I said, I believe it's a reference and an homage to that film, plays into the final episodes. I would say beginning from episode 3, because it's 6 episodes. But like, to me, I kind of see this period because the first 3 are kind of set in 2023. And then the last 3 episodes are set in 2027. So it does a time jump. And like there's this kind of like, as I said, it's kind of the story kind of also explores religious fanaticism and also the formation of cults. So like there's this character played by Yuan. He's like a cult leader at like the beginning stages of a cult leader, where like, you know, he's young, he's charismatic. And then the second half, episodes 4 to 6, is like this. Technically, they're 2 separate characters, but I kind of see them as one and the same. Where this person is older and like they have their audience, they have their congregation, and they're just in it for the profit, they're in it for the money. And the way how the last half of the show deals with references like the concept of original sin, and like using a film like Children of Men as a reference for this very particular scene, I think it's so good. The ending will blow you away. Like, I love the ending so much. I'm like, you don't see the ending coming at all, but it's so good. And like, and before I finish, because I'll stop talking about the dramas now, because we're going to move on to our films. I have a more detailed in-depth exploration and discussion about Hellbound on the Beyond the Romance drama channel. So that's on YouTube while as we're recording, but I'm also going to have the podcast version up by the end of the week. And so you'll be able to have the podcast and the YouTube version available. So that's it. That's Hellbound and Happiness. Great watches. Enjoy them, hopefully. Like, as I said, there are a lot to watch, but it's not because they're like super violent. There is violence, but it's more like the themes are the writing is very detailed, and it makes you think. Like, you're watching things, you're like thinking, I see where this is going, and that kind of stuff. So like it's a lot to like take in, like at just watching. So for film, like we'll begin our film section now. For film, I'm going to pass it on to Neysha because I have 2 films.
You come in with the double headers. That's all.
Yeah, I'm just doing double headers today. So I'll have Neysha to talk about her film, and then we'll do my two films, and then we're gonna have a special segment at the end. But first, Neysha, What is your film pick for December?
So my film, and actually I do have a surprise because I forgot I watched like 2 other films, but like I'm only going to mention them and say I love them, and then we will come back in January and maybe I'll dive into them more. But so my film is Spider-Man No Way Home, which I've had friends who have called this one of the best films of the decade. That and I went into it with like, wait, you said the decade? What do you mean the decade? And he was just like,
but I haven't seen anyone say the decade.
No, not a critic person, like just general. I would say like just taking in general, you know, friends who are fans in the same way that I am fans. Like they're
Yeah.
like people have been like, this was the best film of the year. This might be the best film of the decade. Like I'm like, okay, well let me go in and watch this. I managed to go in with no spoilers, except for like there was that rumored script leak which everybody shared when it came out earlier this summer. But luckily I got to just go in and forget about that.
Yeah, somehow I missed that too.
Yeah, no, be happy you did, because people were being annoying and just like posting it everywhere when it first came. But anyways, I really enjoyed this for multiple reasons. This is also the time when I tell y'all spoilers. Carolyn's already said she's fine with it, so I'm just going to dive right in. And here we go. So, y'all, I did not expect for this to hit me that hard. I've always said that, like, I love Spider-Man, I enjoy Spider-Man, but did I ever call myself like a Spider-Man fan in the sense that some people call themselves Spider-Man fans? No. This movie made me a Spider-Man fan, however, like a very, very diehard fan, as in the sense that, like, I will go and fight for Peter Parker. Like, I will go and save Peter Parker if I could. This movie has a lot going on as far as, like, the story where in the previous film, which we reviewed on here, when it came out, Spider-Man Far From Home, where Peter's secret identity is revealed thanks to the Jake Gyllenhaal's character in the previous movie, Mysterio. Yes, Mysterio. Thanks to that getting linked and him framing him for his murder and all these other things and all of that. So like Peter's dealing with the aftermath of that, and that's exactly where the film opens up. Then you see him like having to go into court, like, and defend himself, and then like luckily that whole situation of being framed for murder, that really gets swept in the rug really fast. But the part that made me scream, Matt Murdock came on the big screen. We have Daredevil from the Netflix Daredevil series. It is confirmed my man is in the MCU. He is not getting recasted. I know, but I just needed to see him. And like I needed to see him to know that it wasn't just a rumor. I just needed to know, I needed to see him on the big screen with Peter. And that was everything for me. So we finally have Daredevil being confirmed in the MCU, which gives me hope for Punishers, for John Bernthal's Punisher. I really could care less about Jessica. I don't care about Jessica Jones. And frankly, Luke Cage, I could take it or leave it. But I'm just happy Daredevil. It's the way I just don't care for the Defenders to come back. You see how I didn't even mention Danny Rand. But anywho, this ain't about them. Matt Murdock is
you can see my face, like
I know. If y'all can see our faces. Anyways, my man is here. I'm happy. He's in it for a very short minute, but like it means a lot because we're building that out more. Other things, there's the whole situation with Doctor Strange and Peter, when like, and Doctor Strange just like, I will cast a spell for you. They do it. Peter, it's the way that like in every Spider-Man movie, I won't say every, but in some Spider-Man movies, it's the thing of like, Peter, if you had just let things be the way they were,
they would have resolved themselves.
It would have resolved himself. You could have just gone and tell Aunt May all over again. You could have told Ned and them all over again. You could have just let everyone forget that Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and none of this nonsense would have gone to the extent that it was going to happen. But no, Peter. But again, Peter is a child. We have to remind ourselves. Peter's a child, and he was thinking like, no, I can't. I don't want Aunt May to forget, and I don't want MJ to forget, and I don't want Ned to forget. And then there's Happy. Like, that's because he's a child and he's having those thoughts front of mind. But anyways, as y'all know from the commercial, the spell goes awry. People all from the multiverse is like not birthed, because we know the multiverse has been existing, but like basically the multiverse is like the existence of it to these characters is made known, and all these characters from multiple from different universes come into Peter's universe.
How is that going to tie in? Sorry to think, but that's fine. My brain's thinking, how is that going to tie into the Loki storyline then?
So we know as of right now that between Loki and Wanda, like those two series, we know that those and this movie, and then you have Doctor Strange's Multiverse of Madness. So I think truly this was really just to like bring the reminder of like, oh yeah, the multiverse, and this is how this all works, and it affected Peter. But then we're gonna have to go to Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness and see how the multiverse is really affecting all those things. Because Peter, what is Peter gonna do with the multiverse? He can't do nothing to fix it. Now it's exactly, he can't do a damn thing with the multiverse. But Doctor Strange is the one who's going to clean it up, and that man's going to be stressed.
You know what the problem is? White people.
It's not Doctor Strange's fault, so I will say it's not that white man's fault. It is Wanda and
Doctor Strange's fault. Did Wong not say don't cast that spell?
But so here's the thing: how everything lines up, we truly don't know. From like Loki, we know with he who remains that he was just tired. He's like, I'm done.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna see what happens. I don't know what's happening, and I've been the only person that's been stopping the multiverse from basically intertwining. Like I have kept the sacred timeline safe, and I have done this for all of time. And now I'm done, and I don't care. So I'll let you two decide.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Which I get that man was tired, but Loki. You shouldn't have it's not technically Loki's fault. It's Sylvie's. I can't remember her name. His girlfriend's fault. She did it. She killed him. Sypha. Nope, that's from Castlevania. Sylvie.
What's her name? I'm gonna look it up.
His variant that he's in love with himself. But anywho, yeah. So that happened. So I don't think it's gonna be made clear to us what the aftermath of Wanda, what the aftermath of Loki, and which one was it? Was it the spell? Was it? I truly believe it's a mixture of all three, and maybe it's just going to be revealed that all three happened at once. Because we truthfully don't know if it was Wanda first, or if it was Loki, or if it was Doctor.
These storylines could have been happening at the same time, just in different locations.
That's what I think. I think it's just going to be a matter of timing, and it's just if anything, Loki's situation probably was the bigger one, since that was more directly tied to the multiverse, whereas Doctor Strange and Wanda seems like they were just effects that happened to the multiverse.
What's the thing? What's my problem with the MCU?
Too many things going on.
It's becoming way too convoluted. It's just getting way too complicated, and the problem with that is you can have complicated and understandable. It's becoming complicated and incoherent.
I feel like the incoherent comes because we just don't have all the answers yet.
And the problem with that is that they are depending on most of the audience still, after all this time, being familiar with comic book canon.
Well, I will say for this one, I don't think you really have to be familiar with comic book canon.
You gotta be familiar with the other Spider-Man films.
So. You have to be familiar with the other Marvel films that have dealt with this. Or
there are how many films? Oh my God, there's almost at this 30 point, films now.
The money speaks for itself. People will keep going. People will keep watching, and then so they're just gonna keep building on it. I mean, no, but people gonna keep going. But
I just want better writing, because the writing for these shows has been, to me, becoming very weak, and they're relying more on fan fanaticism and just us being fans of the characters themselves, rather than the stories, rather than the writing.
Because I will say,
honestly, what is the how good, honestly, has the writing been for the last few? I wouldn't even say the last few. I would say probably the last 7 films. I think after Thor Ragnarok, the writing for these films has not been that good.
I would say if someone was to ask me pick the ones that have been best written, it's okay, Thor Ragnarok. And then it's skip Avengers Endgame, skip Avengers Infinity War. And it's really just because those are 2 examples of there's too much going on. I really don't care. There's no really high I'm not going to go back and watch them. That's how I go back and
I don't come back to watch any of them except for Ragnarok. Ragnarok is the only one I've seen maybe 2 or 3 times. Others,
which
it's one or done and one and done.
Right. Which maybe that's just another discussion we could do as a bonus episode. But segueing back to Spider-Man, I will say this is a movie that I will watch again, and it's more so because for people who love Spider-Man and love the Spider-Man movies, I'm talking about from the Sam Raimi, from Tobey Maguire, and if you did like the Amazing Spider-Man movies, that's great for y'all.
I mean, moments.
He had his moments. I did not go to the theaters to watch them. No, I waited until they came on TNT and TBS. But for y'all who enjoyed Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, which again, he didn't do nothing wrong. I'm just saying it wasn't for me. This is a special film for I think a lot of Spider-Man fans because the moment, which spoiler but not spoiler because we all knew this was going to happen, the moment you see all three Spider-Men on screen together, and there's this very touching moment. Okay, Carolyn, I'm asking you again, are you fine with all spoilers?
Spoilers. Okay, so I just want to pause before I forget it. We keep kind of forgetting that Into the Spider-Verse is a Marvel film.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, caveat after Thor Ragnarok, Into the Spider-Verse.
Yes.
It's not technically an MCU film, but it is still a Marvel film because Marvel bought out Sony and it's produced by Sony, but it is still a Marvel film. So caveat after Thor Ragnarok, you had Into the Spider-Verse, last best Marvel film. The rest have been, I haven't seen Eternals, so fair to like, but I've heard the writing for that is just as iffy. Like there's a whole bunch of plot holes. There's some plot elements that I know of that I don't agree with, like making a black gay man basically technically responsible for the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but I digress. But continue.
I still haven't seen Eternals, but okay, I'm gonna wait until that comes out on Disney Plus still. But yes, so spoilers, as I've said, and again, I've given y'all warnings. Aunt May dies.
Yeah, well, they like killing off the women.
Well, I think
is popular in Hollywood.
Well, it's not. I wouldn't call this fridging. Like it doesn't fit that trope, like of fridging, where it's just that truly Aunt May, her life was sacrificed saving Peter, and it's kind of like this whole thing of if I went in and I knew that there was going to be a death, I would have thought that Ned or MJ, and I had really expected like the real threat to be MJ, to be Zendaya's character who might die. But no, I was not expecting Aunt May to die.
He can't kill Zendaya.
Right. Well, right. I'm gonna fight everybody. But Aunt May dies, and like I wasn't expecting that because like from other series, Aunt May doesn't die. Aunt May has never, I don't know any I haven't been super familiar with the comic books, but Aunt May has not been killed off. So she dies. And you know how like Tom Holland Spider-Man, we never saw Uncle Ben's death. And that was we know that is a very formative moment for Spider-Man. And that's when you get like with great strength, with great powers comes great responsibility. Mm-hmm. Aunt May says those lines to Peter, and that's the first time he gets that. So then when the three Spider-Man come together and they've heard that he lost Aunt May, and you see like them grieving for him because they understand the weight of losing somebody, but also, of course, like losing Aunt May. Like she's literally the only person Peter has left. That is it. That's his family. And now he feels alone and he just feels alone. And like, even though, and I don't want to give everything away from the plot for people who are listening, but like that I felt like was a very touching moment where it's like, here's Peter never being able to like feel like anyone can understand the responsibility, the weight, and all the pressure that's been on him. And then you finally have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield Spider-Man, which they're older than him. It's very clear that they are older than him. Like Tobey Maguire's is like, he looks like there's the joke of like Andrew Garfield saying like, do you just walk around looking like a cool youth pastor all the time? And it's just like, and like it's clear that like Andrew Garfield looks like he's like, you know, a grown man, maybe he's in college or not or something. So it's just nice to see them all interacting with each other in that supportive way, but then also seeing how they interact with each other and like when they're trying to solve the problems and like they have to use their brains and then they're like they're doing science, and it's just like I liked all the chemistry of the Spider-Man. It also does justice to the previous Spider-Man movies where I think a lot of people always wanted answers like, okay, where the hell were the Avengers with Spider-Man? And it's like the answer is in their universes the Avengers don't exist. And then it's like you have there's things like that. There's little things like that. They're like, what the hell is the Avengers? And Peter's like, y'all don't know who the Avengers are? And it's just like, okay, there's the answers for y'all. There's like multiverses. That's why these multiple Marvel movies exist. So technically, Blade is probably in the multiverse with Wesley Snipes' Blade, and then we will have Mahershala Ali's Blade in his own multiverse. So people can stop with the arguments. No, Siri, I don't need your answer. But anyways, I just like the fact that now we won't have to hear angry nerd bros yelling about, but this doesn't make sense because if he's in New York, where was the Fantastic Four? The answer is they probably don't exist in that timeline.
But I've always thought that that's what it was anyway. I always kind of looked at them as separate universes.
That's if it wasn't made in the MCU, I accept that they don't exist in the same timeline. Separate universes, and that's it. And
Like
that's
if
all
they
we have to
hadn't
do.
like you said, if they hadn't brought in Matt Murdock, I would have just I would have just assumed that he's in another universe.
Same. Same. But anyways, I want to give everything away. That's just like some of the things I loved about it. If I were to grade it, I'm gonna give it a 9.5 just because I like that this is like the first true multiverse film. That could change over a year, but I will say it is one of my favorite films of the year.
I am looking forward to it because I do love it. I'm like, my love for the MCU has waned a lot. Like, I really have gotten to the point where I'm just like meh about them.
I feel like Loki brought me back, and I think that's because now we're bringing in the multiverses. That's the thing that because after Avengers Endgame and Infinity War, after Infinity War, I was just like, I'm tired. But
like, honestly, I'm just exhausted. Like, there are just too many goddamn shows, man. That's like,
oh yeah, and Captain Marvel. I mean, I still ain't even watched Hawkeye yet, but I have at least watched the first episode, and it's fine. It's good, but I don't know. It's a lot. It could be a lot being a Marvel fan sometimes. But anywho, that is my film.
I'm just so tired of the MCU. Honestly, I watched Shang-Chi and I'm just like, this film is a bloody mess. I'm not a fan of Simu Liu and I'm not a fan of Aquafina. And unfortunately, I know her behind is getting introduced into it. She's going to be given a significant role, which is my eyes. I'm like, I'm going to have to tolerate her in another film. And she's being cast in a whole bunch of films. I'm just like, please stop trying to make fetch happen with this chick. But that's a whole nother discussion.
I mean, they literally do want her. She is the embodiment of fetch right now. But anyways, this ain't about Aquafina. Please go on.
Like bottled water, as some people call her, Nora, because her real name is Nora Lum. But moving on. So the film, I was going to talk about two films, but I'm just thinking like that's going to make things too long. So I'm going to talk about one film. And the one film I'm going to watch is The Tragedy of Macbeth. They're written and directed by Joel Cohen. It is, of course, an adaptation of this play Macbeth by William Shakespeare. And this film is gorgeous. Like, it's beautiful. It's all black and white and gray. And it is just beautifully filmed. And it is, I think, beautifully acted. It has some of my favorite performances of the year. And it stars Denzel Washington as Macbeth, Frances McDormand as his wife, Brady Carvel, Alex Hassel, Corey Hawkins, Harry Melling, and Brendan Gleeson. And there is I need to mention her name because I think she's just fantastic. There's Moses Ingram as well as Catherine Hunter. So Catherine Hunter, she's interesting. So she plays the three witches of Macbeth, and she's this one person playing, and she's just amazing. The physicality, the voice work she does for these, because she gives each witch a very distinctive voice pattern and sound, and just the way she moves her body is different for each of them, and she's just amazing. She blew me away, and just like the whole cast is so. I think they had a blast filming. I legit believe they had so much fun filming this film, and it comes across on the screen, because the thing with Shakespeare is filled with monologues, just like these characters just ripping and roaring and saying a whole bunch of things. But the cast makes it so engaging that you can tell they had fun really getting into these lines and being dramatic. And Denzel Washington is, of course, in his element. Frances McDormand is in her element. Corey Hawkins as Macduff. I love him as Macduff. I love that Joel Cohen cast. It has, like, I think it's some Middle Eastern or MENA characters, actors in this as well, but the cast is predominantly black and white, and so which I love, because the film is shot in black and white. But like, I just love to see black people playing these kind of roles, and they all have their natural hair, which is to me a big deal. You get to see black people with natural hairstyles, with their afros and their little twists and braids in a big budget Hollywood film adaptation of Macbeth. And the editing for this film is flawless. I think for the year, 4 that I think should be top contenders for editing. 5, I'm gonna make 5, would be The Tragedy of Macbeth, Terrorizers, which is a Taiwanese film, by Hobie Ding, and then there is Whether the Weather is Fine, which is a Malaysian film, Summer Soul, and Power of the Dog. Those five films have fantastic editing, and this film is, I think, to me, brilliantly edited, and the cinematography for it is really well done. And the fact that this whole film is filmed on a sound stage, I think is amazing. Like for Africa, we got to talk to Corey Hawkins about his role as Macbeth and about filming, and like I had to ask him about the fight sequence because he's the one who kills. Spoiler: if you haven't read Macbeth, he dies.
If you ain't read it by now because of a class assignment or seen some iteration of it through a cartoon.
I mean, like, come on now. He dies. He loses his head because of his crown and his pride. And the beauty and the thing with Macbeth is like you talked about Spider-Man and how like for Peter, like if he had just let things resolve on their own, he wouldn't have had a whole bunch of headache. Macbeth is kind of similar. So like Macbeth had this whole prophecy that he would become king. And instead of biding his time, instead of waiting and let things play out as they naturally would have, he and his wife decide that they are going to take matters into their own hands and slay the king. And it's like because of that, like everything just begins to fall apart. Right, like as I said, I can make a tweet when after stuff, and like they monologue themselves into their own self-destruction, and it is like this is like they cause all of these issues, and it leads to his death at the hands of Macbeth. And like the way that plays out in this film, I think is so well shot and so well done because there's all these little sequences and these little nuggets that lead up to his destruction. And I just love seeing Denzel Washington in a film like this again, because the last Shakespeare adaptation he did was Much Ado About Nothing, which would have been in the 90s. And that was with Emma Thompson. And like he was like, everyone knows what Denzel Washington looks like in his outfits from Much Ado About Nothing. He looked very dashing in his soldiers uniform, I think. But he's older now. He's more husky, he looks older, he looks more ballet. And like for the fight choreography, which I thought was interesting, this is that he uses his body a lot because he's big. Like Denzel Washington, like, I don't think you realize how big he actually is, like tall. Until he's with other people, and then I'm like, oh wait, Denzel Washington is a large man, like he's tall and he's like has size, and he's using that physicality in the fighting, and it's just so well done. And it's just like great to see him go up against Corey Washington. Like, so there's the young and the old, the bereaved and the arrogant, and like you have all of these things in these characters, and it's just so well done. And that one is going to be on Apple TV. So let me see, it's scheduled for limited theatrical release December 25th by A24, and it will begin streaming on Apple TV on January the 14th of 2022, which is not that far away because we are at the end of December in 2021, which I can't believe that we are at the end of the year already. But that's my film pick for December, The Tragedy of Macbeth. The second film I was going to talk about was The Power of the Dog, but I have so much to say about that film, but you can see my discussion about that with another film critic Hafa on the But Why Those site. You can have it's in the podcast version on the site, on the Carolyn Talks, as well as on my YouTube channel. So I'm not going to go into that as well. But The Tragedy of Macbeth is a great film, a great Shakespearean tragedy. And like, honestly, I think it's been a while since I've seen a Shakespeare adaptation, but it kind of makes me want to go back and watch more, because like Shakespeare adaptations are some of the best films that you can find. And like a lot of them were done in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I think like Joel Cohen has done, I think, a really good job of that. And also props to the set design, to the production team, because again, I just love this how shadows and shapes and color, or the absence of color, I would say, are used in this film to portray the story and the characters. So that's my December pick.
Okay, I like it.
And now we're going to go into our special extra segment. So this one isn't going to be very long. We're just going to give a brief mention of our favorite things for 2021. So it's not like specific. It's not like we're not going to review like our favorite film or favorite TV show, or whatever. These are just favorite things, just like specific favorite things out of like whatever show or drama. It doesn't necessarily have to be our favorite show or drama, but it's just one thing from these shows and films that we really enjoyed for 2021. And I'm gonna let Neysha go and list her 5 favorite things. So Neysha?
Yes. So my 5 favorite things. Okay, so it was hard, but not really. So Insecure. top of the list. It has been the final season of Insecure. This is the end of an era for us,
It
but
is.
I have to say it's been giving a lot of the things I've been wanting so that we can have the closure that we, the fans, deserve, but that more importantly, that the characters deserve. Kelly has had some great moments in the series. She's been, you know, really taken seriously as far as like being more than just a funny friend, being more
Mm-hmm.
than just the comic relief. I love that about Kelly. I love that she's like funny and she's like wild sometimes, but I like that this season made explored her deeper. I like that this season explored a lot of things. Like there was even a time skip so that we can get forward to like after Issa chose herself and left Lawrence and all these other things.
My God.
Ugh, I know, I know. We are gonna have an insecure
We should.
episode. We should. We did it before. We can do it again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been great. And now we're just at this point right now where I truly am Team Issa first, but Team Nathan second, and Team Lawrence never. Because I don't want her to end up with Lawrence. I'm
I can't
truly
stand his
fine.
ass.
I can't because he acts like everything happened to him. He literally acts like everything bad happened to him. Yes, Issa did cheat on you. Y'all resolved that. You moved on. You worked on each other's on your relationship, and y'all got back together. But then you had a baby with another woman, and yes, that happened while you were with that other woman. But Lawrence, did anyone tell you not to wear a condom?
Mm-hmm.
Did you act like when she told you you were going to be a father, you acted like she blew up your life because you helped create a child that neither of you had planned on having, but here you are. Here you are.
He's so
Just
selfish.
he's very selfish, and it's just like who I don't have to go, we don't have the time to go into it, but like I'm team Issa first, team Nathan second, and um team Issa forever and team Lawrence never. I had to say Issa twice because I want y'all to understand. I totally could see this series ending with her choosing herself and choosing no man. Anywho, moving on. I said Insecure, so let's go into Loki. Like I said, Loki was actually one of my favorite things of this year because it made me a Loki fan, and I was not a Loki fan. Like initially, I liked Tom Hiddleston's Loki, but Loki really did give me the growth, character development, the time we needed for me to like Loki and to see there's more to him than just him being, a villain. And I appreciated it a lot for many things. The multiverse, Jonathan Majors, giving us Jonathan Majors as He Who Remains, and Jonathan Majors being fine in everything he does.
Yes, he was giving very much Shakespeare. He was like, so he's like, use this as my audition reel for a Shakespeare adaptation to somebody, because that's what he was giving. He was giving Shakespeare.
He was giving manic. He was giving tired. He was giving heartbroken, all in one
Tired of
character.
these people, humans, and their folly.
Yeah, oh my God, I can't wait to see him. I'm just really more excited to see him as Kang. Maybe that's why I feel revitalized in Marvel right now, because we're getting Jonathan Majors.
I am not gonna get my hopes up until I actually see, because I'm like, they better do this black man right.
I think they'll do him right, but like the whole blue skin thing, I'm hoping we get it. Like it's not him, a black man being hidden.
Blue. Like
they don't have to. It could just be the helmet. It could just be the helmet. But like it's one of
the paint his skin blue.
Yeah, it's one of them things where I'm like, well, the character was originally blue, so I'm not going to be upset if he is blue, but I would like it if you let me still see his face and that beautiful skin of his, because my God, can we have the regimen? Next, Castlevania, specifically because it gave me the moments with Isaac that I've always wanted, and the growth that we've seen Isaac had over the last seasons up to this last season that came out earlier this year. And it's the favorite line that is now my mental health mantra. I have agency in this world. And that is what I love. I love it. But like also like there's other great moments in Castlevania, and it was just like really, really good show, series. And it was nice to see it come full circle in its last season this year. Next, so I did 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Fourth one, I'm just gonna loop them together and say K-dramas in order. Squid Game, Sweet Home, and Hellbound. I won't dive into each of them, but I would just say those were some of my favorite ones, and I couldn't pick just one of them. So I liked all of them. Squid Game, I've watched 3 times now to see if I missed anything. It's just really good. Honestly, it's a good show to just watch, but then it's also like, again, it's one that, like you were talking about the shows earlier, I like it that it's a show that makes me think.
Mm.
And, I could watch it a year from now and I could really still be shocked at some of the things that happen. Last one, I'm going to say One Piece, the manga, the anime. It's been giving me everything I've needed. And I'm still a One Piece fan as I say this in my hoodie, which I didn't realize that when I wrote it down. But yes, One Piece. Honorable mentions real quick. I've gotten into a lot of these CG 3D, I don't know what they call them, 3D CGI, Chinese folklore feature films that have been coming on Netflix. I know they're like released in China first.
Oh, you mean the fantasy epics?
Yes, the fantasy epics, yes. So there was the White Snake 2, which is like it's the shorter one. It's like it's the Tribulation of the Green Snake. There was New Gods Nezha Reborn, which I really enjoyed the first Nezha film. And then I've like this has also introduced like a bunch of other fantasy epics from China that like have popped up. So like I've been enjoying them. White Snake, the first one apparently was a live action, and then you have like the Tribulation of the Green Snake is the sequel to that. But
Which
I'm
is
gonna go back.
animated, correct?
That one is animated.
Yeah.
But apparently, from what I'm understanding, the Nezha New Gods and the Tribulation of the Green Snake, these are supposed to be happening like under the same studio, and there's more of these fantasy epics films that are coming like from the same studio. I'm assuming I'm fine with them not being connected at all. I like did some research and some people are saying like, oh, I wonder if they'll be connected. I'm like, I kind of hope they don't.
Well, they kind of would be connected if they're in the same mythology, because that's how a lot of the fantasy epics they kind of operate, because they all come from the same myth, like they're all based in Chinese mythology, and a lot of them do have like similar stories that are interconnected. So generally when they do adaptations for them, they're generally loosely related. Like you might get a reference of a character from another story mentioned, or like you'll hear like, oh, this person like this person was in this city that is mentioned, because they all generally take a place around the same time period as well.
Right. And so far from what I've seen, they take place in different dynasties or different time periods. But what would be interesting, and I say like I kind of hope they don't, is just like for the first ones where they are introduced, I like how they like exist on their own. And then like, okay, yeah, if they do this thing where they've been transported or reincarnated in the present place, I haven't seen that yet. I'm interested to see how that will go down. But I've really been enjoying them. Like they're really good. I watch them subbed and dubbed. I think more people should check them out, because if you enjoy anime, or I think for people like anime fans like myself, if you have not checked out Chinese fantasy epics, you will be surprised at how much you would enjoy these. So I've watched them in the past, but they've mostly been live actions, like, the films that most people might be familiar with. And then this one, these few ones, like the 3D CGI animated ones, I found them to be very good. Like,
they're very good. And for Nezha Reborn, there's actually 2 versions, and both versions are animated. So there's the 3D animated version, and then there's another animated version where the animation style is more similar to like Avatar, the Avatar series. So it's more like 2D animation, like more 2D rendering. Whereas, so like there's 2 Nezha stories, and both are on Netflix. So but one I think is when Nezha is the one that's more 2D, similar, more with the animation style, more similar to Avatar, is that's when Nezha is younger.
Yeah, and they're not, so the one when he's younger, they're done by different studios, and apparently they were being made at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I will say, watch the first Nezha to give you the origin story, even if
of how he became that way,
of how it became that way, because it does, like, even though they're not like the films are not connected to each other, so they're not, it's Nezha Reborn is not a sequel to it, but conveniently it feels like a sequel to it if you've watched the first Nezha film. So it's nice.
And like because we did Nezha Reborn for Saturday Night Sci-Fi. We did that live tweet, I think possibly in August. I think somewhere around August is when we did the live tweet for that. And that was pretty good. It was very entertaining, very fun. And so for me, my favorite things for 2015. So I'm gonna mention 3 K-dramas.
2021.
So,
you said 2015.
You said 2015. Go back 6 years?
You about to take us back 6 years, and I'm going to be 24 again and out of college.
I don't even know why I'm thinking 2015. Like that makes no sense. Okay, so for me, so I'm gonna mention these ones kind of like bottled, so like it's specific themes about them. So like for mine, I love the art in mine. So like art, the way actual art is a concept and a theme in that drama. And I love the art pieces, like the art and the set design and the costume design are so good. I just love how this drama uses art to tell a story and tells us different things about the characters, because each of the characters, if you go in for the set design in their rooms and like their offices, is very specific to each character, and like each painting, each mural, each sculpture, each even like some of them are mirrors, but the way how the mirrors are actual art pieces, but they tell so much about the characters. I just love the art design and the set design and costuming in mine. Like the production team did a fantastic job, and Kim Soo-yeon, shout out to her, she's amazing. She's one of my favorite actresses. And then there's Beyond Evil. The tension between Lee Dong-sik, played by Shin Ha-kyun, and Han Ju-won, played by Yo Jin-gu. The tension between these two characters is ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh, like the acting is phenomenal, but the tension between them, like this is a drama. It's a not police procedure, but it's a thriller. It's about a serial killer, and like these two characters they're both cops, but they all both have their own agendas. And the way how the plot unravels, and like all of the different little Easter eggs and plot developments, and the little ways that something that happened in episode 1 is brought back into episode 16. And then, you know, like how all these, like I think the writers and the director did a fantastic job of tying all of these little things together. But the acting, the tension between them is so good. It's phenomenal. And then there's Yumi Sao, which is a adaptation of a webtoon.
Yes,
I love this drama is good. It's really good. There are some things like the characters are frustrating, like the main lead Mugu, oh my god, he's so frustrating. I'm just like, my man, just open your mouth, speak, and tell the woman, don't let her misunderstand things because you refuse to communicate properly. Like, you're a grown man, talk, use your words. But my favorite thing about Yumi cells are the cells. Like one of the most unique things about Yumi cells is this within the real world, and then is this in this animated world. So the animated world is the cells, like you have like the emotion cell, and then there's the love cell, there's hunger cell, there's fear, fashion. I keep calling it financial, but it's not. That's the name, but that's the cell that's in charge, making financial decisions. And it's like, to give a close comparison would be, what was that film with Will Smith where you had the cells in the brain and body?
Oh, wait, was it Will Smith or Eddie Murphy? Because I do remember there was a film where Eddie Murphy had a bunch of tiny Eddie Murphys inside of his body.
No, it's Will Smith where like something Johnson, where like, and like Will Smith voiced one of the cells in the body, and then like the real person was played by this white guy. Oh my gosh. But like he got sick, and like you saw like how the white blood cells form together to fight against bacteria. But there's that, but then there's also a Japanese anime called Cells at Work.
So yes.
So Yumi Cells animated version is kind of like Cells at Work, where you see all the different cells. But I love the cells because each of them have their own personality. So like you have fear cell, and fear cell is always fearful. And then there's the anxiety cell, who's always anxious. But then each of them, even though they have their main dominant personality, they all still exist within experiencing like anger, sadness, fear. Like all of them have these same reactions. And I just love the animation. The voice work by the voice cast, I think, was really, really good. And I am in love with Hunger Cell. Hunger and Detective Cell are my favorites. And they're so funny. So that's one of my favorites. So those are 3 of my favorite things from K-dramas. And then there's Evangelion. So there's 3 films. There's, Neon Genesis, Evangelion. There's the series, the anime series. And then there's these 3 films. And the third film, I haven't seen the first 2, but I need to. But the third film, I love the ending. Because I love how the director, he's just like, this world is fantastic. Like, it's like, but it's also filled with so much angst and pain and destruction and just like sadness. Like, these characters have been through hell and back 50 different ways. But at the end of the day, literally at the end, spoiler, at the end of the last film, he takes you out of the animated world, and the way he does it is so beautiful. Where you go from this hyper realistic animation style, and he takes it back to the line drawing, just like to the original bare bones concept of animation. And then from all of that, you're transported back to where he's just like, this is a fictional world. Do not get invested in these characters. Like, I love that you love these characters. I love that you love this world that I created. But go outside and touch grass. Go and take a walk on the beach.
Yes.
This is legit what he's saying at the end. And I just love that he's so bold enough to just like, even with his own work, he's just saying, do not get invested in this world. Don't be bogged down by this fantasy. Go outside, touch grass, go outside, smell the rose, enjoy the sunlight on your skin, experience the world, the real world. And I just love that he did that. And I'm just like, that's such a brilliant way to end such, I think, iconic series, because Evangelion and Neon Genesis is one of the most iconic animation series ever. And like, they have one of the most iconic theme songs as well. Like, I love the theme song for Neon Genesis. It is a bop.
It is a bop.
I play reggae, and I'm just like bouncing around my house. I just love it.
People will just start dance. Like, it's the way if you start it, and people, it's like the Yu Yu Hakusho opening, where it's like that. It's on that level of like, it is ingrained in our brains. As soon as we hear it, we like, wait. Yep. Can't help it. You got to finish it. I'm kidding. But no, and I mean,
the thing is about that is like, the words are depressing, of course, but the theme, the melody is about. But I just love that he ended it like that. I'm like, that is such an iconic way to take on an iconic series. And then the other thing was Cowboy Bebop. I'm so happy that I actually finally watched the entire Cowboy Bebop animated series. I had started watching it a while, like a few years ago. I saw like maybe 2 episodes, but I never went back. But before the live action show on Netflix, I went back and I watched the original series. I'm so happy that I did that, because these characters are so complex. I don't like how it ended though. In my head canon, you know, he's not dead. He did not die. He just passed out. He was found, and he's been Ed and Aang and everyone on the ship, and they're happy exploring the galaxy. That's my headcanon.
When we can hope. You can totally choose to believe that.
That's what I choose to believe.
That is fine.
I refuse to believe that Spike died.
It's the way when I first watched it, and that was years and years ago, and it wasn't until the 3rd time that I rewatched it, and I was like, oh, he died.
Mm-hmm. I was upset. I was legit upset. I was just like, what?
It went over my young brain, and then it wasn't until like, I don't know, Cowboy Bebop is one of the most rewatchable series ever, especially for the way that it ends. It is so easy to just go back and rewatch it, and that's why he lives on. And he's not dead.
He's not dead. Spike is alive. But it's also one of the reasons I think it's also rewatchable, and why I'm glad I watched it, is because the writers they did such a good job getting so many. Like, as I said, I love films and shows that make you think, and it touches on so many things, again, like capitalism, even racism, xenophobia, and you know, and because it homophobia. It is one, I think, one of the most racially diverse animated shows ever created. Like, there are people from every ethnic group present in this show, and like, they show you how basically the world that we live in on Earth, what is as diverse, is also universal, because like, you have like, for instance, there's a planet that is basically Mexico.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about it, is because in Watanabe's like depiction of sci-fi, of like what it looks like in Cowboy Bebop, is that technically you have like, yes, there's a planet that's basically like, you know, Mexico, or there's like New Tijuana, or like there's other places that has influences from cultures and races that have like the ones that have like they migrated to a planet, and that is where that culture like expanded, and it like basically like, okay, New Tijuana. But then it's like, it's the way that when you think about it, Spike was born on Mars. We don't know if Spike's ethnic say it. I don't know why I can. He's Martian. You don't know what Spike's race is. A lot of people will say like he's coded as Japanese, because, you know, he was inspired by Bruce Lee and just Asian Chinese in general. Chinese, my bad. But like, some people will say like, oh, he's coded as Japanese, or he's coded as Chinese, or he's coded as Asian.
As Asian, but I didn't take him as specifically as specific.
I think it's just because some people assume it because they know that his fighting style was inspired by Bruce Lee. So there's that whole thing. But it's like, technically when you get to the point with Spike, he was born on Mars. He's Martian because at this point, races have like intermingled and populated and gone all over the place. That truly, they're like, yes, a character can look like they are from Black descent and they're Black. Like, there's Jet, which we all understand that Jet is Black. But
Jet
then
is
you
Black.
have,
He's not
and
ambiguous at all.
at all, he is Black. And then you have other characters who are brown, who have dark brown skin, who have like the, the woman, the bounty hunter with a big afro, love her.
Yeah.
You have characters who are blatantly, clearly Black, and it's just like the
I think
creator
she's
does a
inspired by
great job.
Foxy Brown.
Mhm.
Probably.
She is. And it's just like the creator's way of just like, there was never any limitations in putting people of color, like, and making a diverse series because it makes sense that all these races and cultures would exist in the universe. It's a big place. It's like, it's not happening just in one country. And then what I like to believe is Cowboy Bebop takes place far off in the future, right? But then there's Carol and Tuesday, which we know takes place earlier on. I like to believe that Carol and Tuesday predates Cowboy Bebop.
Oh, that they're in the same universe.
They're in the same universe because there's mentions of like different space travel. There was the whole situation with Faye in the gate, and there was that incident that happened. So I'm pretty sure that Carol and Tuesday, they mentioned some of that because there's talks of like, yeah, we're on Mars and like I'm from Earth originally. And like the whole situation with Earth and Cowboy Bebop was people are trying to leave Earth because it was dying, or like it was like basically all the rich people left Earth and all the poor people, which they called the refugees, were there. And you see the beginning of that conflict in Carol and Tuesday.
That's making me think of that's very similar to Expanse, and I would love to talk to James and say Corey about that. About if I can see Cowboy Bebop being an inspiration for the world of the Expanse, because the Expanse is the same way. You have people who left Earth and they colonized and terraformed Mars, and like race in the Expanse doesn't function as race as we know it. Like we know these characters are Black. There are characters who are Asian, Southeast Asian, East Asian. There are characters who are Caucasian. There are characters who are of Tibetan and African ancestry. And like it is mentioned, like specific characters that are from Africa, like from East Africa, from Ghana, Nigeria, and like they're mentioned. But the thing is like with a lot of these characters, like once they leave Earth and they go into like other, like because there's Mars, but then there's also like place like Ganymede Station, which is an asteroid, and like there's asteroids that are inhabited by humans. Like once they leave Earth's orbit, they kind of stop functioning as races, as being Black or whatever. Like they become whatever planet they inhabit. So like you have the Martians. Race doesn't matter on Mars. What matters is that you're Martian and not Earth and not an Earther. If you're in the belt, which is a belt of asteroids, once you're there, you're no longer Black, white. You are a belter. That's your identity. Like, and I love that whole concept of like where wants to leave Earth's constraints of the idea of racism and ethnicity and all these things, that you become something else. But then like later in the books, that is explored for like thinking like Cowboy Bebop, where because of things like colonization, how does that impact the footprint of humanity? And like what kind of like because the problem with humanity, we are stubborn, we keep repeating the same mistakes. Like what kind of identity is formed like when you go on to another distant planet? Like are you going to take the same social issues that you had on Earth and bring them to these new colonized worlds? So like Cowboy Bebop does explore that. That's why I'm glad that I watched it, because I'm just, deep animation that's deep thematically and also beautifully shot. Like the animation style in Cowboy Bebop, I think, is beautiful. The music, iconic. Because they use like different styles of music, especially a lot of Black forms of music. And then the other thing, this is because we're gonna wrap up now, but my last favorite thing of 2021, I watched The Witcher, and I haven't seen the last episode of Wheel of Time because we're releasing it weekly, but up to now I've seen the first 8 episodes of the Wheel of Time. And my favorite thing from The Witcher, like I love this series, I think it's better than season 1, but one of my favorite things about The Witcher is we got to see Geralt in daddy mode. I love to see him and Ciri together. I just love, he's like, she is my daughter. Like he wore her by law of surprise, yes, but she's his daughter. He claimed her as his. He's like, she may not be of my blood, but she is mine. And I just love that scene. Like, the guy, he's like, is she yours? He's like, she's mine. He's like, is she yours? Like the guy just, he's like, 'cause I think he was trying to get a girl out to say like, yes, she's my daughter. He's like, she's mine. And he said that as he's looking at Yennefer, like, do not doubt that this child is my child. And I just love that. I just love seeing him in daddy mode and being all like, you know, he is a natural protector, but I just love seeing him protective over Ciri.
Yes.
And then for the Wheel of Time, I am a stan of Nynaeve and Lan. Like, I am here for them. I am fully a Lan and Nynaeve stan. Like, is Danielle Henney, and the actress's name is Zoe Robbins. The two of them together are amazing. I love their chemistry, and I'm just like, from the first moment he looked at her, I'm like, I ship you guys so hard. And I'm here for the fantasy dramas. I am here for Papa Geralt, as I'm calling him, and I'm not sure if there's a shipper name for Nynaeve and Lan. I'm gonna call them Nynaeve.
It works.
The show has its problems, like particularly the characters of Rand and Matt. Nynaeve does get on my nerves a bit. I'm just like, girl, Morena has tell you we are in for some troubling times ahead. Buckle up and get in shape. She's still being very doubtful, and it's like irking me. I'm just like, Nynaeve, girl, just like you have seen these the fade and all these things, the Trollocs and everything's coming. Like, girl, this is not time to be hemming and hawing and doubting. Just like get in shape and get to work. But apart from that, I am loving them together. So that's the end of my favorite things of 2021 list. There's many more things that you and I could add to our list, but I think we've gone on for quite a while with this podcast.
Yes.
So forgive us, everyone. But 2021 has been a year, and I think it's pretty okay to go over our usual 45 minutes an hour for like an end of year podcast special. This has been amazing. This 2021 has had a lot of downs, but like LaNeysha and I, we've had amazing ups. Like covering South by Southwest, covering TIFF, covering Sundance Film Festival. We've had an amazing year as a podcast. I think we've done amazing. This is our 2018, 2019, 2020. This is our fourth year as a podcast, and we thank everyone for being for listening to us, whether you're new or an old listener. Like, thank you so much for sticking with us and for just following us. And I hope 2022 has more ups than it does downs. And thank you, Nisha, for being my co-host and my friend. You've been there for me, and this is like doing this podcast has been a lot of the highlights of my year. Like, I've had a very trying year. I've had a very tough year medically and personally, and like doing the podcast has helped me to take my mind off stuff. So like, thank you so much for being with me and talking with me about film and TVs and books and manga.
Oh, thank you. And I would like to say thank you for also being there for me through this hellish year. Well, hellish last 2 years, but you're right. We have done a lot of great things since we started our podcast. And I'm just like, growth. I love to see it for us. I love to see us thrive. I love that how far we have come since starting this podcast, but also during a pandemic, during an ongoing pandemic. Carolyn and I are thriving, and I'm just very proud of us. And thank you for being an awesome co-host with this show. And with that, I am manifesting even more, better, and greater things to come in 2022. But also, hopefully I will be able to share some great news with y'all soon in 2022, which I will stop talking now. But that's it. With that, oh my gosh, y'all make sure y'all engage with us on Twitter, on Instagram, because we do have an Instagram now. So yes, follow us over there. And
I need to do better posting on the Instagram account, I'll be honest.
I mean, I need to do better on the Twitter, but at the same time, y'all know how to engage with us. Tag us both, and we will talk to y'all about film, TV, movie, all that jazz. But wishing y'all happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and just everyone stay safe, have fun, watch some TV, stay inside, or wear your mask if you go outside. But yeah, with that, you can find us on So Here's What Happened, which if y'all want to follow us on Instagram or on Twitter, that is at @SHWH_pod. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Neysha Plays. That's NEYSHAPLAYS.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Carrie CNH. That's CARRIE CNH12. You can follow my hashtag Dramas with Carrie, where I like tweet dramas weekly, 8 p.m. Eastern. Follow the hashtag Saturday Night Cypher, where I am my co-host week. We do a weekly live tweet event for films and TV shows of the sci-fi genre using a hashtag Saturday Night Sci-Fi every Saturday night 10 p.m. Eastern. You can find both mine and Nisha's works in our pinned tweets as well as on butwhythepodcast.com. You can find So Here's What Happened in podcast, well, of course it's podcast format, on butwhythepodcast.com as well as other streaming platforms available to Acast as well as on Spotify. You can find my other podcast, Carolyn Talks, on butwhythepodcast.com as well as Beyond the Romance, my Asian drama podcast chat on butwhythepodcast.com as well as the YouTube version on my YouTube channel under my name, Carolyn Hines, HINDS. And I think that is it. So this is going to be our last podcast for 2021. Thank you everyone for an amazing run. Hopefully we'll see you in 2022 with some fun announcements and new possibly segments as well and new specials for So Here's What Happened. Oh, I should say something that we didn't mention. One of the other favorite things that I'm glad that we did in 2021 was speaking to Stephanie and Vita about the Amazon, the new Amazon comic series in DC Comics. Like that was amazing to talk to them. We're working on something else for the end of the run of the comics. So it's this comics, and I think only up to now 4 issues have been done, but we're looking to do something special for the 6th issue as well. So yeah, I just needed to get that in. Support Stephanie and Vita and the other creatives that work on the Amazon comic series. You can buy comics from your local comic book store. Support your small business owners, and if you can't, order from a recognized comic book and book distributor. And with that, I will sign off, and everyone have a safe New Year holiday and an entry into 2022. Bye.
Bye.